for it.
We are back again.
They still haven't kicked us off.
Still haven't kicked us off the YouTubes yet. What a horrible mistake they've made. We're back, and Josh is in a little different location today. He's mobile.
I'm mobile, that's true. Up here at Granite Arms, Team Granite Arms, New Hampshire.
From New Hampshire.
We were back there. There's like 40 guys back there pulling, but the signal sucked, so we had to come out here. So I'm basically in like a hallway where they sell restaurant equipment. If anybody needs a stove or anything, just give me a call. I'll hook you up.
Well, we got two special guests on today. We got Nate Gagnon on my left here.
What's up?
And we have Steve Pettis on my right here. We wanted to have a little discussion about, promoting the sport of arm wrestling. So I think these two guys run two of the best state tournaments in the country, in my opinion. So we thought it'd be a pleasure to have you guys on. Thanks for coming on, guys.
Thank you for having me.
So, why don't we do this? Because not everybody knows you guys nationwide. Steve, probably a lot more people know you. You've been in the sport a long time. But would you guys mind just telling everybody how you got involved in the sport initially?
Yeah, for me,
Why don't you go first, Steve?
I got started back in 1993. I got suckered in. I was 130 pounds, right? And I got suckered into going out to an old bar, local tournament. And at first, I wasn't going to do it. And, what the heck? I'll give it a shot. And from that time, I was hooked, just hooked. And we spent the rest of the night arm wrestling on a bar stool all night long, and then from there it just progressed into getting hooked up with the right guys and the right people, and a lot of the things were already in place for Michigan Arms with George Dybel and even some of the guys before that, and I kind of just started piggybacking off of those guys and got more involved with the sport and went to my first AAA Nationals in 1995 out in Pocatello, Idaho, and I hadn't missed one, and it was like 15 years that I hadn't missed one. And then I had a job change, and I had finally missed a Nationals a few years back. But, I got hooked up with Frank and Karen and those guys and started reffing for them. And from there, it's just been up and onward. Every time something comes around, try to get involved with and make sure that the Michigan guys are involved with it as well.
Very cool. Nate,
cool.
How'd you get into the sport?
I had no idea anything about arm wrestling. Arm wrestling was over the top, and that was about it for me.
It still is for me. But,
So, I had a really good friend, Justin Medore. He was the guy that had never been beaten in high school in the Marines, so he wanted to get into arm wrestling. We went to the main state arm wrestling tournament, and I went with him to support him. And there's a couple guys that were running it. It was kind of a circus. There was probably 30 people there in a room the size of my kitchen, and it was, some dark, dingy bar in the middle of nowhere, Maine. And it was a pretty poor representation of what I thought arm wrestling should be. So, he took his lickings. I think he went 0-2, and, we went back to the drawing board, and we found Pulling John, and that kind of opened my eyes to what arm wrestling could be on a bigger scale. So, I hooked up a little bit with Kurt Howgate, who used to run, all the arm wrestling tournaments in Maine. He's the guy that started the Northeast board.
Right.
And he just kind of laid some things out for me. I mean, he'd gotten out of arm wrestling promotion quite a while before I picked it up. But, I had never done it before. I had no experience, and I just kind of took the ball and ran with it. So that was 5 years ago now. So I've been promoting for about 5 years, different tournaments and events, and that's kind of where I started.
Very cool.
Yeah, and you pulled for a little while. I know both of you did, but we can start with you, Nate. I know that you have a lot of pride in your promotions.
Yeah.
For you, what held more pride for you, or is it just a different pride? Was it pulling or promoting?
I always viewed pulling as like the camaraderie and just kind of being around the guys. I wanted arm wrestling to be, for me, the events I set up, I wanted it to be something that guys could be proud of. You know what I mean? Like, I went to this big event. I had a great time.
It was well run. There was no issues, no problems. And, they look at the trophy on the wall and they're excited about it. And that's what I wanted it to be about. Pulling for me was never really that. I mean, I'm not that good at it. Ask Badger, my wrist is like a Twizzler. And, there's no way around it. I might get lucky and cheat or pull some Travis Bagent bullshit on you. But other than that, that's about it. I pulled a couple tournaments. It was a good time. I lost some matches I shouldn't have lost. There were some wins I wish I would have gotten, but, it is what it is.
Yeah, and it's not over yet.
Yeah. I think it's pretty over, I'm pretty confident. I haven't touched the table in probably a year and a half, and, I went above and beyond setting up the events to the point where, there was really no organization for practices in Maine. So Team Maine was kind of, just kind of floating around. Kurt Howgate was the backbone to it for a long time. And,
yeah.
I think that people get burnt out and, not that I tried to take over what Kurt did, but just tried to take it and keep moving with it. And some people, had a hair across their ass when I first came around and they thought I was trying to take over and, people have a hard time with change, but, it was for the betterment of the sport. We would have practices on Sundays that were 3 or 4 hours long, 26 guys showing up. It was great, but, like with burnout, everything takes its toll. I was spending all day Sunday setting up an event, never knowing, if someone was going to show up or not. The same people bitching that there's never practices are the same people that never show up or they show up for 20 minutes and leave. And it's like, so I kind of took a step back hoping that what I had built would, keep moving forward, which sadly it didn't do. So that's kind of in a nutshell, I guess, where I was at with that.
Yeah, it is tough because those things do happen sometimes. You do, like you said, the people who complain about it not being around, then it's around and they don't come. There is a bit of that for sure. How about you, Steve? I know I've seen you pull fairly recently too. So you must still have quite a bit of fire in there.
Yeah, and for me now it's more hobby and fun, right? Back in the day it was brutal, right? Train, and now I'm fat and old and got some tendon problems, right? So it's more hobby for me. I still get fired up when I do get in a match. We just had our Border Wars, and we were doing an overall, and I got pretty fired up in a match and a couple matches. So it's kind of fun when it does happen because it brings that back for you. But for me, it's always been, since I started promoting, it's always been I want to have the biggest, best promotion out there that's possible, right? I want the best awards for the cheapest amount of money. You got these guys that are charging $60, $70 to arm wrestlers to pull, and most arm wrestlers aren't rich people, right? So it takes everything they have to be able to put a weekend together and go travel that far away and spend that kind of money. So I really appreciate the sponsorship and stuff that I get from my sponsors to be able to not have to charge a whole bunch of money to pay for the trophies.
Yeah. Right.
So when I can get sponsorships and things like that, it really helps us out. And from that, I take great pride in that. And, George had already started the Michigan Arms thing. And so when I got hooked up with George and he kind of went to he's in the backside. He does the films and stuff now, and he still runs our website, but I do all the Facebook. I do all the upfront stuff, running, tracking things down, but he still helps me out a lot.
Yep.
So it's a team effort for us, and to do what we did like the last couple of years. We did 275 arms in 2014, and we did 316 arms last year, and we're hoping, I'm hoping for 350 would be a realistic goal for August, but if I hit 400, I would be ecstatic. But we'll see how it goes. We got really great awards. The Gorillas, I don't know if you guys have seen those.
Yeah, those are awesome.
They're just, a lot of people are very interested in trying to come and get one of those. And one of the things, you gotta put it out there to the pullers, right? The pullers are the ones that actually make the event. We just set it up, and hire the people to do the tournament that the best that we can.
Yep.
But make sure there's like Nate said, there's no issues in brackets, there's no injuries, that type of stuff. And if you can get that stuff going, then the pullers will come back, and then it grows and grows. So the pullers are really what puts on the whole show. Right? If they're not there, there's no reason for us to put on a show. Yeah. Because we all know there's not a whole lot of spectators showing up.
Right.
So let me ask you guys this question, because I'm sure we've all been to tournaments where 25 people showed up, and it's disappointing for everybody. We have a question coming in right now from Chile about, he's curious about, were there specific things that you guys noticed once you added or changed that increased the numbers? Like, was it which weight classes you used? Was it really the prizes? Or, what did you guys do that you felt made the biggest change?
My personal opinion is, Game of Arms and WAL being on TV has really put an influx of competitors into my tournament, right? That exposure with the amount of emails and Facebook messages that I would get over the time that was on, that it airs, is phenomenal.
I think that part of what helped my tournaments grow was just time and reputation. So I think that when you put the work in and the effort in, and people see that it's a good event, people are going to travel. I think the main states back in March, I had 14 different states represented plus Canada. I mean, that's pretty. I mean, people come from as far away. I think Robin Chandler came from Utah, and Craig Subelair came from Florida. I mean, people are traveling from all over the place to come to these events, and so I think that really, once you get your reputation out and people know you're not there to bullshit around and you're going to put on a good event, they'll travel for your stuff, because, the options are pretty limited. I get a lot of flack sometimes about not expanding my weight classes, and, a lot of times I say, well, prove it to me, so do the work, and get the classes full to the point where I have to add another class, and then that always brings more people in. And I think having the kids classes also, kids classes are huge for my event. I think I had 50 kids enter my last tournament, so that's pretty huge.
That's huge numbers for kids. So we have we run a separate tournament for our state kids event, and we don't pull those numbers. That's huge. And I 100% agree with everything you just said as well, right? That nails everything right down to you have to have all that stuff in line to be able to have good events.
Yeah, and what do you guys think about like having the same tournament on the same time, like the same season or the same month, or how important do you guys think that is for people to plan? We'll start with you, Nate.
Are you trying to bait me right now?
No, why?
Oh, weird.
This is the thing.
So, yeah, this is the thing, man.
Oh no!
I guess
what have I done?
I guess in the Northeast, people don't give a shit about the time that you set your tournaments up. So, for the last 5 years, the first Saturday of June has always been my call to arms event, and this year I canceled it, and it was one of those things that, people don't respect the times that you set up a tournament. I know that I never set up a tournament either the last week of September or first week of October, because that's when Harry, Bean, and Priscilla are going to set up their thing in Weirs Beach, New Hampshire. It's just out of respect. But so I was going to set up a tournament the first week of June. Someone took my date, so that I was going to move it to the next week and just say whatever. And then that date was taken, so I said, you know what, we're not going to have one this June. So it's frustrating, but people need to work together if they want things to work. If everyone keeps stepping on each other's toes, that's what's going to happen. It's going to piss me off to the point where it's like, is it worth it? You know what I mean? So
yeah, I totally agree. I didn't know it was a thing.
Yeah, that's a thing, man. It's a thing up here.
Okay.
We had New England's. We had New England's in November,
right.
And one of the states in New England set up a WAL qualifier the same day as the New England's.
Yeah.
That's. Yeah,
I remember that now.
It's just, it's kind of a no-brainer, I think everyone needs to work together a little bit more.
I 100% agree with that. How about you, Steve?
Yeah, I agree as well, right? You can't have tournament directors stacking on top of each other. And that's, when new guys call me and ask me about, running tournaments and things like that, that's the first thing I tell them, right? You can't stack on top of, because then you're making the pullers choose, right? And you want to give options to the pullers, but you don't want to have those guys that are stuck like halfway in between each of those events have to choose which one, because it hurts both events. So if you stagger your events far enough apart, then the pullers can hit both of those tournaments and both tournaments could thrive.
Exactly.
Right? So it's all about communication and talking to each other. So we got a solid core group of guys in Michigan that are running tournaments. And that's what we just all communicate with each other to keep our events away from each other. And we all work under, kind of same, like the under the same umbrella, right? So we all kind of try to keep it Michigan Arms.
Yeah.
And
I think though, for one of the first things I do when I'm trying to pick a date for a tournament, especially if it's a new tournament, I'll get on Facebook and just kind of look at my events and see how many events I've been invited to and what those dates are.
Yep.
And, I'll try and do it, 2 to 3 weeks between. So I'll have 2 or 3 weeks before one event, 2 or 3 weeks after event. So there's a little bit of time for guys to recover between events. There isn't a push for people to decide which event they want to do. And then I'll get on the Northeast board also and, just check that out and see if there's any dates and kind of put some feelers out. Does anyone know of anything that's going on in the area? Although I have my finger on the pulse pretty much of what's going on, it's still nice to just double check and
Right.
kind of see. So I think that's important, is to just, not to step on people's toes.
Yeah, sure.
Especially people that have been around for a while.
Yeah, and
100%, right? I just moved to Kentucky, and I'm still doing my Michigan Arms thing because it's only a few hours to get back up to Michigan. But that was the first thing I did down here was, all right, what tournaments do you guys know that are going on so I can get those dates and make sure that I don't, because I'm trying to build things up around here a little bit as well, and make sure that, like Nate said, not step on anybody else's toes, even though it's not super organized down here yet.
Yeah, and in places like the Northeast is tough because there's so many states in one area. But we did it for years. I mean, every October we had the Fall Classic in Connecticut with Chris Ganji. Everybody knew it, and nobody stacked on top of it. It is possible to do it with a little bit of respect and a little bit of, like what Nate said, feeling out. Just take some time to make sure that there's nobody there.
Well, we are getting back there now. I mean, with the New England's, this year, all 6 states are on board. So like you guys were both saying, we have a week on either end with no tournaments, and then the week of the tournament. So we basically have 3 weeks where that's the only tournament. So that should increase the numbers. But it's incredible to me. I mean, wherever you go in this country, there's always areas of complete disagreement and tournaments being stacked on top of one another. You guys probably saw that initially 2 of the 3 nationals we have were scheduled on the same day, although that's been corrected. It just seems like, we step on each other's toes a lot in this sport.
It does. It's happened. And, like I said, I've been around since '93, and you see it, right? You see it all the time, and it's there's a lot of people out there that are power hungry and want to come in and take over your area or whatever, and sometimes they learn the hard way and the fast way, right? We've had guys come into Michigan think that I'm going to be the new organized arm wrestling director in Michigan, and they stick around, have 1 or 2 tournaments, and they fail.
Sure.
Yeah.
And
I think
Steve, you've been around for a while. Is this something that's getting worse, or is this something that's just the way it's always been?
I think it's getting worse as far as the big leagues go, right? The big leagues are, they're the top dog, right? We're giving out the money. We're going to do what we want.
Yeah.
There's talk that they try to limit that, but when it's a business for somebody,
Right.
They're about making the money for themselves. They're not worried about all us little guys, right?
Sure.
What were you going to say, Nate?
I can't
Don't
remember.
tell me you forgot, man. I can see some smoke above your head. I don't know. Does that have something to do with it? Let me ask you this while you're thinking.
I think I was going to go back to his point about, people find out real quick. For me, I guess this June was a freebie. And so next time this happens, it's just going to make me want to blow that event out of the water, I'll still set up a tournament on that same day. It's going to be, I mean, people have to choose, and when you have a good reputation versus a reputation where not that many people show up and the location's kind of sucky, and then it's going to be, maybe that person should have thought twice before they took my date, I guess, you know what I mean? So I don't want to have to do that sort of thing, but I mean, at the end of the day, I'm in it to set up a good event, and that's what I've, those are my dates. That's what I do. So.
Yeah, definitely, man. And you just want to make the best event you can for the pullers to keep coming back. You want to create something so that as many people have a chance to compete against the best chance of hitting all these guys. What's up, Chris? Get your arm out of the camera.
Holy shit, what is that thing?
Yeah. It's like a peanut gallery over here.
Why'd he put his leg through the shirt? I don't get it.
It's like a ham hock.
So just so you know, that was Trevor Bazell just walked by, and he has a super match with Chris Gobby, who he outweighs by about 100 pounds. So we'll see how Chris does with that one.
Now, are they
I'll tell you how Chris is going to do with that one. Chris is just going to hold him in the table and ask him when he wants to get pinned. That's what's going to happen with that match.
Is that is that going to start in a hook? Did I get it right?
They're starting to hook, right?
Yep.
I thought I had heard that.
Oh, yeah. Chris is going to walk through that.
We will see. I'm very curious to see how it goes. That's in Boston on August 6th. So, Steve, let me ask you this question, because you're big in with the AAA, which when I first started arm wrestling in the late 80s, AAA was the only national, and that was the one everybody looked forward to, and I still love it. However, we have 3. The USAF is the official world qualifier. What's your opinion on the potential of having a single unified nationals at some point?
I don't see it necessarily happening anytime soon, right? Mm-hmm. All the powers to be that are out there that run the 3 nationals still want to host their events, right?
They're all great tournaments. They're all amazing people, and they're all great tournaments. And I think we've said that on this show that, when we talk about this, we're not trying to say that one's better or one's a better run. It's just like, the idea of having one and, people's general thoughts on it.
Yeah, it would be nice to go back to the day when a nationals truly meant something to most of the nation. Like I said, my first one was in Pocatello, Idaho, and I was in awestruck, right? It was amazing for me as a 21-year-old kid, right? I was just like, wow, this is awesome. And it would be nice to see that again, but I don't think the way U.S. arm wrestling is that it's that important to the U.S. pullers as it is in Russia. We just had a Facebook discussion about this a few weeks ago, right? The state of the U.S. arm wrestling is more about the TV and the money than it is necessarily the WAF world event like it is in Russia and all those other countries over there. They're getting compensated for it, right? For us, our guys have to take off a week's worth of work minimum. They have to pay thousands and thousands of dollars to go travel. So it's just not as, that WAF title is just not as worth it to them to train for and to go for. So I think to get back to one nationals and for it to mean something it could be
I think it's a good point. And, it's hard to argue that it is very expensive. There's no money for it. But what do you say to, like for example, having in one national, you would at least assume that you would be able to tell people, I'm the national champion, and it actually means something because there's not 3 of them. There's the one. And the whole country's invited. If you don't show up, it's on you because there's only one. It's scheduled, like Nate was saying, there's a certain day that it's scheduled for, say whatever it is, August or July. And at least, if there was a single tournament, people would be able to feel that their national titles had more legitimacy. Do you think that's a fair argument, or?
I do. However, I think with the big leagues, right, most of the top guys aren't showing up. So you still have that little bit of stuff that's back there that, hey, everybody really knows that the best pullers don't show up for that event.
Right. I mean, the hammer means more to people than the national title does at this point. You know what I mean? Because with the hammer comes the paycheck, and I think that's what money talks. So
That's true.
No, that's very
Definitely true.
And you got to realize a lot of those guys who are winning the hammers also have been around for a long time when those national events did have 25, 26 badasses in the class. So they won it when it was how we dream of it being. So they're like, listen, I did it. Like, I'm proud of it, but it's time to do something else, So there is that part of it too. So it would be it'd be interesting to see one nationals and to see it be maybe not necessarily a payout, but there's some kind of compensation with some kind of, I don't know, some kind of like maybe organization that we all pay dues to if you decide to be a part of it. That way the top spots do get a little bit of compensation towards worlds or towards whatever. I don't know. I think you have to if you're going to unify them, we're going to have to do something new with it. I don't think we can unify it and keep it to be the same national we always had. I think we got to unify it and then create something intriguing out of it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we got another question coming in online from Mihai Constantine. I'm not sure where they're from, but they're specifically asking what you guys have done to get sponsors because it's something that they struggle with.
Nate, you can go ahead. I'll answer after you.
Sponsorships are never really anything I've really dug my teeth into. I always ask the venue that I hold my event to sponsor the event. So a lot of times I'll ask them to help contribute towards the cost of the awards or any other bill that I have that is going to be related to the event. For a while, I was really pushing the fat grips, the Captains of Crush. I was able to get things like that to pass out to people along with their awards. But as far as monetary sponsorships, I've never really explored that much. I tried to get beer sponsors before, but a lot of times it's just too much of a pain in the ass to deal with. And I have a full-time job and a part-time job, and this is a hobby, so I only have so much time I can dedicate to doing this. So yeah, maybe you could help a little bit more with that.
So what I do is I present it to everybody that I'm going, especially the host locations, right? So right now I'm hooked up with the Holiday Inn West in Kalamazoo, Michigan for our state championships. And I presented it's a partnership with those guys, right? You help me pay for this stuff and give me this sponsorship. I, in turn, bring tons of people into your facility to drink your beer, eat your food. So you're making all the money off of that. And I'm also paying all these people. I give them a list of all the people that I have to pay so that they understand that the money isn't just going in my pocket and I'm going out and having some hunky-dory tournament and then taking off on them, right? Sure. So I have a whole presentation that I put together and let them know that it's a partnership. And I've been fairly successful. Like I said, I got the Holiday Inn West. I have on-site seating and upholstery. I have all catalytic converters, the sports orthopedic specialist, and arm fighter photo right now for our sponsors for the 2016 Michigan State. So with those guys, most of my expenses are covered as far as awards go. So then I just have to pay my refs and scorekeepers.
See you later, guys.
Good luck, bro. So as I said, I have a PowerPoint presentation that I put together, and I use that when I go in and talk to the facilities or the sponsorships. And most of my sponsors have ties back to the sport, except for a couple. So
that helps.
Yeah.
That question was from Romania, by the way. He wanted to make sure that you knew that. So there you go. Say hi to the guy in Romania.
What's up, Romania? But going back to something that Nate brought up earlier, and it's something that I don't have too much of an opinion on, to be honest with you, but I'll ask Steve first, and I'll ask you, Nate, to go in a little in-depth into what you said before about weight classes. When you're thinking about a tournament, and you're talking about a lot of weight classes versus few weight classes, Steve, what do you think? If maybe it has to do with money payouts or something like that, but what do you think about what weight classes you choose and how many weight classes you choose?
We try to stick to the standard 54, 76, 98, 242 and above. You know, we've had a little bit of issue where we had some smaller guys wanting 143s. We used to run a 132 and stuff all the time back in the early 90s and stuff, but most of those guys, which were me, are fat now, right? So we ran a 143 class a couple years ago, and then I decided to go ahead and switch it up and add the 220 class to break up that 242 class, because that class was fairly large. And most of the guys that were pulling into 43 were pulling into 54 anyways. So I try to stick to those standards, right? And I definitely keep the left hand and the right hand the same classes, because I remember, being a small guy trying to pull in those left-handed classes that they had back then were ridiculous, right? You know, 0 to 165 at a national tournament, and so my left arm is junk because I never got to really pull with it. So to help the new pullers, I make sure that we run the same classes, both right and left.
Cool. And Nate, what did you when you were talking about your weight classes and people bugging you about maybe adding some, what's your rationale behind the amount of weight classes, whether it be few or a lot?
So I like to run the UAL. If anyone remembers the UAL, I like the UAL weight classes. So 65, 85, 205, 235, and then 236 plus. Those ones have worked really well for me. I mean, I ran the 54, 76. I think probably my first tournament, and then after that I switched over to UAL weight classes. I tried to run the 150 class, but it was the same 3 or 4 guys, maybe 3 guys pulling, and it just didn't make sense to run that class for me anymore. So I dropped the 150s, and so we do 0 to 165, both right and left-handed. So novice classes were where I was kind of running into where I should add classes, where I shouldn't add classes. And I think we were, so I had 3 novice classes. I think it was up to 185, up to 235, and then 236 unlimited. And in Maine, we get a lot of big guys. So that 236 unlimited was like 18 guys in a class. So yeah. I decided that I split it up. So I was doing 4. Those classes got huge, and they were still doing 14 to 16 guys in a class. So then we split them up again, and I think I've run 5 novice classes now. So they mirror the open or the pro classes. And so with women's classes, it's tough, right? Because they want all these women's classes. They want 3 or 4 different weight classes for women, but then you get 3 or 4 women that show up, and they, you know what I mean? They don't. So that's always been an area that I've struggled, and I like the 0 to 145 and then 146 plus. I think that works out well, and it's a good break off. I would like to add maybe a 176 or a 175, and then go 175 plus, but the numbers just don't support it. And the argument is, well, if you have the class, then the numbers will support it. Well, in my experience, that's not the case. So right, I guess that's kind of like how I rush.
Yeah, it's a pretty big gamble. That's a big gamble. Just saying, if you have the class, people will show up. Well, who says? You're gonna pay you're gonna pay the entry fees up front, or
right?
That's one way that I don't know if it's even possible. It's just me thinking right now. But if you were to come up with that system of online entry, where you pay up front, you could get an idea and then make the weight classes after. But nobody would ever sign up if you had to make the weight classes.
Yeah, exactly.
So even the WAL is struggling with having people sign up early, right? Yeah. It's always last minute, right?
Right.
I don't understand.
It's just how arm wrestlers are.
Yeah, it is how arm wrestlers are. Try to get them to use Skype and watch what happens.
We didn't have that much trouble today. This is pretty good.
No, I was the one who caused them the trouble here because there's no Wi-Fi in New Hampshire, apparently.
Yeah.
So we have a question/comment from Bolek, who's from Poland, but who lives here in the States, and we all know him as Bo. Yeah, that's the man.
My boy Bo?
Yeah, your boy Bo.
Oh. Get him off.
Is he going to ask why I'm still dodging him? Is that his question?
Get out of here, Bo.
Surprisingly, he hasn't asked that yet, but his question is a serious one. Is like, he's pointing out that only arm wrestlers really watch the sport. What can we do to bring a larger audience? Otherwise, we stay in the basement, he says.
For me, and I may sound like a WAL bandwagoner here, but
Uh-oh. No, go
the,
ahead.
the editing that they're able to do, right? So if you watch, the last PAL event that I watched on CBS, right? They showed the entire thing, which is great for us pullers, right?
Right.
We know the technical side of it. We know what those guys are trying to do. But your average fan that's trying to tune into that wants to see the action. And that's where the WAL's editing that they're doing is, I think, gaining fans, right? People that are not real interested in a sport, but it catches their eye because they cut out most of all that 5 minutes worth of grip.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah, definitely. How about you, Nate?
That's something I struggled with too because, we were setting up workshops, trying to get people to entice people to come in and join. And, we'd spend a couple hours at, one of the local bars one evening, just kind of putting a table out there and offering for people to come over and check it out and to try it. And, it didn't really pay off. I mean, nobody showed up. It didn't increase entries any. Tried to get people to sign up on the spot. Pre-register and give them a break on it. That didn't help any. So, going around and trying to flyer and do like that, just like the street team approach of just like mass marketing and just getting the name and the image and stuff like that out there. I mean, I think that's really the approach I used at the beginning when I first started promoting, was just getting out there, putting flyers in every gym you could think of, powerlifting gyms, going to powerlifting meets, wearing a team main, arm wrestling, a hooded sweatshirt. It creates a conversation,
Yeah.
And so then people will ask you, oh, what's that about? Or, oh, you're an arm wrestler. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah. So, there's an event coming up, and that sort of thing. So you can kind of, whatever you could do to create a conversation. But I mean, even that's the thing that the WAL was struggling with too, is they were trying to figure out ways to entice people to join and to get the numbers up, go to sporting events and set up these tables all over the place. And really they were kind of spinning their wheels too. And they kept encouraging the people that were setting up events for them, what else can we do? What else can we do? And, I think that everyone was kind of like, either you want to arm wrestle or you don't. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Apart from chaining someone to a table, I don't know how else to get them to arm wrestle. So,
well, it's tricky. It's tricky from, compared to other sports. And I'm sure you guys have all had this experience when someone says, oh, man, I never lost before. Let's arm wrestle. Then you're like, okay, so it's going to happen. If you beat the guy, not only is he not going to join the sport, he's probably never going to be in the same room with you ever again. So then you have to try to make him feel like he's doing well. You're really strong. You should come train. And it's like pulling teeth. You have to actually throw a chain on them and yank them into training. Otherwise they won't come, because people's egos are so fragile.
Yeah.
So it's extremely tough. People don't want to lose. If you're not comfortable with getting your ass kicked, arm wrestling is the wrong sport for you, because everybody gets whipped.
Everybody loses. Yeah, and that's, I ran a tournament at this festival in Michigan, and they also have festivals down in Florida and Minnesota and stuff. It's a Renaissance type festival, and I was at the front gate with a table and a registration booth and everything, and 20,000 people passed by that front gate, and the amount of walk-up entries I had were like 1% of that, right? And you got 2 or 3 guys to show up that just happened to be walking by, and to the point to where guys' wives, right? Oh, look, honey, arm wrestling, you should do that, and they're like, nope, I'm not doing it.
It's crazy. To me, it's kind of, I mean, it's been brought up before, but it's somewhat like UFC was. When that first came around, everybody was like, oh my God, have you heard this thing where they just beat each other up? It's disgusting. It's awful. And then all of a sudden it just took off. Now, what made it take off? I don't know. I know it wasn't people with a booth saying, hey, do you want to get choked out over here? And people going, yeah, I guess I'll try that out. And for some reason, it just took off. So I don't know if it's just a time thing or if it's an exposure to how, dedicated athletes are to it. I don't know. I don't know what it is.
I mean, the word's certainly out there. I mean, people come out of the woodworks every once in a while. You get these guys that come out of the middle of nowhere that are just like, oh, I think I saw it on TV once, and then they're just like, they do a good job and everything like that. But I mean, Maine is such a huge state with a small population that it's really difficult for people to get together and train. I mean, when I would host my trainings in Portland, everyone would travel for an hour in every direction to get to to trainings, and sometimes even further than that. And then you go to northern Maine, and I mean Maine is like, I mean, it takes 8 or 9 hours to drive from one end to the other, so it's kind of like, and with a million people, so it's kind of tough to organize that sort of stuff and to get real good training clubs together. But I think that's one of the biggest barriers for Maine is just like the geography is huge. So
I run into the same. Sorry.
Go ahead, Steve. Go ahead.
I was just saying, we run into the same thing with the UP, right? We had a small pocket of people up in the UP, just north of the bridge, and then there was a few guys that were up above Wisconsin that used to go down into Wisconsin and pull. So, but we never focused on anything that was in between there, just because of the sheer, like you were saying, Nate, the vast amount of land, and there's so few people there. So we kind of just.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's definitely hard.
So I got 2 points. One to you, John. I was thinking that what you mentioned about MMA. Like when you think about it, the sport itself isn't really that huge. I mean, there's not a lot of people that are actually MMA fighters. There's a shitload of people that buy the gi and walk in and train 3 times and then walk out and say, fuck this.
Hey, man, I got a tap-out shirt.
But there are a lot of big stars, and I think that's kind of, to speak to Steve's point earlier, that's what the WAL is trying to do, make stars. And I got a couple of people asking questions. I'm going to combine these 2 questions, so sorry, guys, for this. But basically, they're saying, one person saying, is it a good idea to bring like a superstar to try to get people in through the door? And another person is mentioning, are super matches a good way to increase attendance? What do you guys think?
Well, like look at the Scott Mendelson bullshit that's going on. I mean, Scott Mendelson beats Travis Bagent, and they think that that's going to make the sport blow up. And I mean, Scott Mendelson's calling out Tim Bresnan. Well, I think Tim Bresnan's going to probably pass away before Scott Mendelson ever beats him. So, I mean, that's just not going to happen in this lifetime or any other. But I don't see that. I mean, didn't like Sean Merriman or whatever his name is from the San Diego Chargers? Didn't he beat Travis Bagent one time arm wrestling too? I mean, that didn't help the sport blow up. It just makes it look like more of a joke. And then they get Rich Piana to try and jump into it. And I mean, he's a big social media celebrity, if that's even a thing. And that was gonna make the sport blow up because he's got 1 million followers on Instagram, and they're all 5%ers, and they all love this lifestyle of fitness and whatever else. And I mean, that didn't go anywhere. He showed up to practice one time, and Scott Mendelson held him in the middle of the table. And if you can't beat Scott, I mean, then what? I mean, so I don't think that that's the approach that they should be using. Because I don't think it's going to be effective. It just makes it look like more of a joke. It makes it look like a sideshow. Mm-hmm. And the people that are serious about it don't want that. I mean, people bust their asses to make, to do this work. I mean, I'll draw back to Tim Bresnan. I mean, he busts his ass. He trains hard. He doesn't want it to look like a joke. You know what I mean? Then you bring someone like Scott Mendelson in that just sits there and talks shit. It's kind of like, it's not good for the sport.
What about like people who are stars within the sport, like Devin Larratt or Travis Bagent, as you mentioned? Do you think that helps add attendance or super matches?
I think, for me, young pullers, guys that are first into the sport, they want to get their pictures and stuff with those guys, right? You see all the pictures of the new guys, with Ron Bath, Cobra Rhodes, Alan Fisher. You see all those guys wanting to get pictures with those guys. So I think that having those guys at your events, it does help for the new guys. But once your event, if you're not constantly bringing in new guys, then if you're paying those guys to come to your tournaments and stuff, I don't think it necessarily helps after when you're in a lull. When you do have a lot of new people showing up, I believe it helps. I believe super matches, and like we're getting ready to announce a 6-man round robin for super heavyweights for the Michigan State Championships this year. Cool. That way I can get my brackets done and not just have everybody sitting there waiting, right? So we have some type of action going while the bracket people are trying to make all the brackets up. So, it helps in that aspect, and it helps gain some attention for your event. That's
I mean, I like running super matches for sure. I think they're fun, and I think it's good for. I think it gets the crowd excited to start the match, especially if you get someone like RVJ or something like that that's going to really explode and blow it up, or you get Mikey Yellow, or I've had those guys do super matches before, and it's fun for the event. It gets everyone excited. It sets a tone for the day. So I like it in that aspect. I just don't see that. I mean, if you saw a flyer of Rob Vigent and whoever, and you're like an average Joe, I mean, is that going to make you want to go to an arm wrestling tournament?
No.
Right.
I mean, who's this guy? I mean, he looks good, but that's about it.
Right. So
Right.
that's an interesting point. And this is just a question because I don't have any clue. Is there a difference between marketing towards the open class guy or the novice guy, or if there is one, what do you guys tend to, go towards? Nate?
I think that for the open class, I think it's good to get it. This could be a double-edged sword. If
Right.
you let everybody know who's going to be at your event and you start listing off the names, either it's going to attract some people like Josh Grant, who's like, "Fuck, I can't wait to pull Storm," or it's going to cause people to stay home because they don't want to take their lickings and lose. So,
That's so awful.
yeah, it's tough too because like I said, it's a double-edged sword. Because I like to talk about the fact that in the 95 class, or whatever, the 205 class, we're going to have X, Y, and Z. But then you look and those guys don't show up when they find out that Rob Vigent's coming. But chances are Rob's going to pull the supers anyway, or whatever
And so
class.
what?
You know what I mean?
You get a good chance to pull the
Yeah.
guy.
Exactly.
Right.
Oh my god, yeah.
But like you go back to the ego thing, right?
Yeah.
Even though arm wrestlers know how to lose, right? A lot of times they don't want to spend that money just to get their ass kicked if they know they're not going to take first place, right?
Right. And then so for the novice guys, I like to. I mean, a lot of the guys in this area really, the guys that are pulling and just kind of getting started, they really get that this amateur class, the novice class, is a stepping stone to get to the bigger stage. Look at the guys like Corey Dupree from Granite Arms is a perfect example. He understood that he had a small time frame in the amateur class, and he was using this as an opportunity to go and pull in the pros. And every time you see a guy like that who's just starting out, that they make that jump, it's like, all right, here we go, time to start back at the bottom and work their way up. So I think it speaks a lot to work ethic and the ability to take a loss and then suck it up and then come back for more. So I think that's where you find that the people are going to really advance, and then the people that can't take a loss, those are the ones that they don't come back next time. So
Yeah, so really you're kind of focused. I don't even know if you can, but you're trying to anyway mentally focus towards that person who's going to be. They're an investment. I mean, that they're going to be there in 10 years. They're going to come to the event.
Right, and I do view that as I mean, there's a certain level of PR and handshaking and baby kissing that goes into being a promoter, and it's important to encourage people to attend and to keep up with what's going on in social media and drop a good job or a nice work, or you're really improving, because they are. And that's one of the other things I like about promoting is guys that I see for their first time at a tournament, and they go 0-2, and then they come back to the next one, they go 0-2, and then 3 or 4 more tournaments later, they're still losing every match, but they're still showing up.
That was me.
And then they get that win. Yeah, no shit. Yeah, that's all I ever heard about you. It's like, man.
It's true. It's so true.
But then, you know what I mean? And then you got guys that they stick with it 3 or 4 years later, they're getting a national title like you. You know what I mean? So, or 8 or 9 years later, whatever it is,
It was
but
6.
it's like, yeah. So, but that for me, seeing those guys that have come up and worked their way through the ranks and get those wins, like the first open win, the look on their face. I mean, if it wasn't for my event, that opportunity wouldn't have been created. So that's a pretty rewarding feeling. And I think that's one of the things that drives me to keep going is, after the event, you get you see everything on Facebook, all the family pictures, and just knowing that you help create these memories and this opportunity is really what kind of helps to motivate me to keep going.
I like that. That's great. How about you, Steve?
Definitely.
For me, my marketing side of it is, obviously, like Nate said, there is baby kissing and handshaking going on, right? And you're trying to entice those guys to want to come back in the camaraderie of the sport and things like that. And it's like at our state championships, I have the gorillas. I keep those for the pro guys, right? Because I want the novice guys to strive, say, I want one of those, right? It's a 15-pound freaking trophy. I want one of those, so I don't give those to the novice guys, right? I give pretty decent trophies to the novice guys as well, but I want them to strive for that. And we've also created championship belts that we've been giving out for. I'll run a tournament and say I'm giving a belt out to this class, like a tournament that we have coming up in July. We're giving out the 154 left-hand belt and the 176. So the guy that wins that class has that belt, and he has to defend it twice a year, right? So it gives some of those new guys to strive, to say, hey, I want a shot at that belt, right? Because they're pretty prestigious, and the guys love them. So, that kind of try to market. I'm trying to market better awards, better things, so the new guys stay in the sport and strive to get there.
Do you let the person keep the belt, or is that something that just goes along with whoever's the champion at the time?
They have the option of buying the belt, right? So I have a whole contract written up that states I still actually own the belt until you buy it. If there's any damage to it, I provide them a bag and everything. Actually, I have one right here, right now. It comes in a bag and everything. And I give them a contract saying I still own it unless if you want to buy it, all right? If you want to buy it, you can buy it from me. And then you'll own it for life. And if you lose the belt to another puller, then you have it, and then I have to give the new guy the belt. So
it's pretty sweet.
That's cool. Yeah, I think that's cool to have to create something interesting and new, and also create something for maybe somebody who really doesn't have a great reason in their own mind anyway to train for something. You got to defend this thing twice a year. You got to keep going, dude. If you don't keep going, you will lose it. That's I like that. I think that's a good idea. I think that's a great idea.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And maybe this is just something that just popped in my head here, but something maybe that's not so easy to always talk about. But let's talk about reffing in a tournament, right? Because I've really only helped put on one tournament. I've never really done it, but I remember it being a big deal about refs, and it's always difficult, especially if you're around an area with a lot of guys who have refed and a lot of guys you like personally, but maybe you just go, well, maybe, here's a list of 8 guys. We only need 4. So we got to leave 4 of them out for now. That can hurt some feelings and stuff. Steve, what do you think about how do you choose refs? Or have you always had like a roster of refs that you've always just gone to?
Yeah, we have a pretty good roster of refs. Alan Burgett is one of my key guys that I go to. He's been pulling longer than I have. He won the 93 World Championships in Canada. Actually could be considered still the reigning 121-pound world champion sit down, because they never ran another sit down after that.
And didn't he also have a world title before he had a national title?
Yes, he did. He actually at 93 he took second to Barry Hurst at the Nationals, but Barry didn't go to the Worlds, and Allen won the Worlds.
That's what I thought. I heard that. That's a funny story.
Yeah, and him. We have a group of guys that we typically work with. I pull some guys from some different areas as well. One of the things that I like to do is, keep them in the head referee spot, but rotating, because we run 3 tables, like at the Michigan State. Right. We run 3 tables. So I keep those guys rotating off the table on the starting side, and then I have 5 or 6 guys that I use on the downside that I allow. Those guys don't pull, right? I don't allow those guys to pull the tournament, or ask them not to. Most of them don't.
Sure.
And then I have 5 or 6 guys that are pulling a tournament that I use throughout the day to rotate out for most of the down positions. Because when you got 6 refs that you need full time, it's hard to get that many guys to show up and want to ref, because a lot of guys want to pull, right?
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. How about you, Nate?
So reffing has never been an area that I've ever had to worry about. That's actually one of the strongest parts of my tournaments, I think. And I was fortunate enough to hook up with Badger right out of the gate. I mean, so Badger has always been my head ref, and then Chris Ganji and I formed a really good relationship, and so him and Badger now, they're usually the two head refs at, I'll run 2 or 3 tables depending on what it looks like, and they'll run the 2 tables, and then I just, one of the first things I do when I set a date is I make sure that nobody else has got the date. I make sure the date works with my venue, and then I make sure the date works with Badger. And then if Badger and Chris are there, that I know that I'll be fine. So, I've got Badger. Essentially, Badger's team is Bill Caldwell and Harry Bean, and then Josh Grant's actually started to fill in some reffing for me when I need him. And then from there, Tim Lewis almost always comes up from Pennsylvania, and he'll ref also. So I've got a pretty good core of refs that I trust and to run the tables, and they do their thing and I do mine at the bracket score table, and we run a really smooth event. So
really, as far as you guys are concerned, like, you just have a good team who just works together, and there really isn't too much to worry about. Everybody knows the rules, and just take care of the job.
Yeah, but that's part of why you guys run such good tournaments, is because you have solid crews that you trust, and that's not always the case, as we all know. So, I mean, it's good information for people out there. Make sure you get quality refs that call a fair game and know what they're doing. It seems like a simple thing, but a lot of people don't do it for whatever reason.
Yeah, it blows my mind when I look on Facebook and I see pictures of referees drinking beer while they're reffing, and it's just like, holy shit, how does this even happen?
Yeah.
Speaking of things that
can't happen, right? It's a legal issue, right? You can't have a ref sitting at the table drinking. It's a legal issue. Anybody that gets hurt can say that you didn't have a qualified referee or incapacitated referee. So, I've even been working on a training regiment for referees to have them signed off, just in case I ever ended up in court, to say, hey, this guy's been trained and he's a capable referee.
So speaking of refs, I got a few people asking questions here. One of whom is Chris Ganji, and he was curious about what you guys do in particular. See you later, brother.
Bye.
To deal with people that act like clowns at tournaments, or if you've ever had to kick somebody out. I mean, obviously we've all seen Mac Telly's videos, but I mean, have you had problems with people, and what do you do to handle them?
You know what? At my last event was probably one of the only times I've ever really had to deal with anybody, and it really pissed me off that this person was so selfish that they would come and try and ruin my event by being loud, obnoxious, yelling at my refs, making a scene, swearing in front of families and kids and things like that. So with my next tournament probably coming up, I'll have a conversation with that person and let them know whether or not I decided to let them be invited to my event again, because I don't need that bullshit. They can keep their money and stay home. I don't want that at my event. Right. But honestly, usually the refs set the tone for the event, and they lay out the expectations for a nice, respectful event, and make sure to let them know it's a family-orientated, space, and warnings will be given, and then they'll be, eliminated from the event if they can't keep it together. So, but usually most people don't talk shit to Badger anyway. So
Badger's actually standing right here.
No.
So,
yeah.
He's I'm going to unplug this so you can hear him. Oh, Steve, I want to hear your opinion too, but Badger, what we were just talking about is when you have people acting like clowns at tournaments, and how you deal with it, and what when that comes up, steps you take, that kind of thing.
Well, each case is an individual case, and fortunately for us, we don't have to deal with it too often, but I'll always attempt to give the person the opportunity. I take them off to the side and we have a little conversation. If it has to go further than that, then it is what it is. But fortunately, in my career, it hasn't had to go to blows ever. We've had a couple of close calls, but believe it or not, I can be as sweet as I can be nasty. So try to treat them with a little bit of respect if I can. I think the only time personally I've lost my cool, which good thing there were cooler heads there to prevail, is when this clown down there from John Brown knows who I mean.
He's not my friend.
What's that?
He's not my friend. Whoever it is.
Yeah, well,
I remember
what is it? Philippe's uncle?
Oh, yes.
When when he lost his cool and at Nationals started screaming that I was a cheating effing American and America sucks, I don't take too kindly to that, and I'd be the wrong guy to talk to at that particular time. So fortunately, Mike ALO and a few other guys held me back from kicking his ass. But that's the closest I've come to really losing my cool on somebody at a tournament. You can usually talk them down pretty well if you give them a little bit of respect.
How about you, Steve?
Yeah, for me, our group is really tight-knit, and for the most part, we don't get anything like that. There's been a few times I actually, have had to throw a teammate out of a tournament at the Nationals because he was cussing at me and I was reffing, right? And here's a guy that I told him, and he wouldn't talk to me for years, right? For years. And just over the last couple of years, we've been able to put it aside, right? It was nothing personal. He didn't even really say anything that bad, but it was to set that tone, right? And he had been talked to before, and so it was just we were at the Nationals, and he said the wrong thing, and I threw him out of the Nationals. And it was so most people that come to our tournaments know you do have the occasional drunk that shows up that thinks they know how to arm wrestle and thinks they know what's going on, and you got to put it aside. If it's just a spectator, most of the time we kind of just talk to somebody they're with and tell them that, hey, can you keep this guy calm? He doesn't really know what's going on. They're bitching about rules or something like that. And if it's a puller, just like Badger said, you take them aside. And it's mostly some of the new guys and stuff that get that way. And you just pull them aside and say, hey, look, we're not looking to have that type of atmosphere. This isn't what arm wrestling is, right? And that's where me as a promoter, I've been trying to get my sport, my events out of the bars, right? So trying to do more of the hotel type, ballroom type things. And, we still do have our tournaments in the bars and stuff, a couple of them, but as I moved down here to Kentucky, I just partnered with a indoor go-kart track facility, right? So that way we're not in the bar and people aren't drinking and stuff. We're at this facility, and they're
You should give away go-kart rides as prizes, because I would come down just for that.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I tell you, these things, they're 45-mile-an-hour freaking go-karts.
Those things are awesome, man.
You can't drive a fucking go-kart, Pettis.
I can't fit in one anymore, right?
I wasn't going to go there. I was going to tell you they have weight limits, but
Yeah, the only time I've ever seen anybody get fired up or rude at a tournament, it's always one of those things where someone just takes them to the side and says, "Listen, dude, there's 100 arm wrestlers here. You will not be here in 2 seconds if you don't calm down. Just be cool and be part of it." And they're always like, "Yeah, okay, fine." That sounds like a good idea.
Well, John, you will remember it, and Nate remembers it even better. But you've got those times where just the competitive mode gets in the way. Look how mad Maxwell got mad at me up at Nate's meet. I mean, I thought he was going to rip my head off on a table.
Yeah.
And, I calmed that down just a little bit, and I told him, go sit down and think about it. And he came back up later, and we hugged, and, it was all good. But you get the spur of the moment. You just can't throw gas on that fire at that moment. You got to be able to cool it down a bit. Yeah. And then, cooler heads will prevail.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I got a gentleman who's been asking stuff from Saudi Arabia for a while, and he hasn't given me his real name, but he's on here as MWK. But anyway, he wants to ask a non-promoter question, and he's been asking me over and over again. So I'm gonna did you guys get a chance to see the John Brzenk and Yoshi match that was just been posted up recently? And if so, what did you think of his use of the King's move in it? Did you guys watch that match?
No.
Nope, I have not.
Also, none of you have seen it, so you can't comment on it. But it was interesting because he beat John using the King's move, which we just saw John take care of relatively easily with Michael Todd. What was it, 2 years ago? Now at UAL. So,
right.
Well,
Yeah, I mean,
you're not going to get any brilliant opinions on that from Saudi Arabia, unfortunately. You're going to have to come up with a question. These guys, apparently they're not doing a lot of arm wrestling video watching.
Well, I can comment.
What do you guys do with your spare time? I mean,
look at pictures of Micah Yellow.
Yeah, I mean, I can comment on the King's move itself, I guess. I mean,
Yeah, he saw the show with Devin when Devin was defending, and he agrees. He basically surprised that somebody was able to trick John with it. That's what he's coming down to.
Well, I don't even think it's a trick. I think sometimes it's one of those moves where if you don't take care of it fairly quickly, fatigue sets in, and once fatigue sets in, you can't do it. So what kind of shape is John in? I don't know. From all we've heard is that he's not pulling anymore. So you get somebody who's maybe just having fun in a match and a little out of shape, and your hand blows up a little bit, and you're 20 seconds into this move where all the pressure's on your hand, and that's it. You just can't. You know how to defend it, but you just don't have the power anymore to do it. In that moment. So it is what it is. That move is it can hang you up, and it can really if it puts a little bit of blood in your hand or in your arm, you're in trouble. It's just the way it is.
Well, I just wanted to get his question in because he's been very patient, and I think he might be the first gentleman we've had from Saudi Arabia. So
I'll email him my opinion.
Shut up. Yeah, email him some info about that. So listen, we've had you guys on for an hour. I don't know if there's things that we forgot to bring up, or if there's anything you guys want to add in that new promoters should be thinking about before they set up their first tournament.
Safety, right? We haven't talked a whole lot about safety and break arm position and everything like that. That's the number one thing, right? If you're known as a promoter that's letting people get their arms broke at your tournament, people are going to quit coming, right? So that's the number one thing. And you want these people to go back to work on Monday, right? You don't want them to go home, having $20,000 freaking surgery bill in their pocket because a poor decision that you let them pull drunk or your ref was drunk or whatever, right? So that's one of the key things. I spent numerous amount of time going over rules and how to be safe on the table. That's the number one key, right? So first you got to have safety. Second, you got to have decent refs. Actually, probably second would be for me is scorekeepers, because if you screw up a bracket, that'll ruin the whole tournament, right?
Sure.
And then good referees. Those are the top things for me.
Steve, I don't want to correct that, but I'm going to tell you number one would be the refs, because if you don't have good refs, you don't have safety.
Yeah, that's true, right? So the
you know what I'm
safety
saying?
and good refs go side by side.
Yes, sir.
Very good. How about you, Nate?
That's why he's my head ref.
Well, I don't even care about that, but I mean, I've watched some videos.
Yes, you do.
Whether it's WAL, PAL, I don't care who it is. I've seen some of these refs, and I don't know why people want to use them or defend them, because people are going to get hurt. And I don't care what the level is, from child up to amateurs through pros, opens, whatever you want to call it. You can't be afraid to tell a superstar, look, you're in a break arm, you either get out of it or you foul them. You can't be afraid of that as a ref. I'm not up there to be your friend. I'm up there to make sure you come back again safely.
Definitely, yeah. What do you think, Nate? What are your final thoughts on this subject here?
I think that time is important. Take your time to put it together an event. I get a lot of requests from people. Can you put together an event for me? Or I have this going on, and I want an event for this and that, and I want to do a fundraiser, and it's not that easy. So if you're interested in setting up a tournament, take your time and make sure that you cross all your T's and dot your I's. Make sure you have a good liability waiver, like Steve was talking about. Make sure you have a good team behind you. I have a great bracket guy. I have an awesome MC. I've got a great reffing squad. And I'll put my team up against anyone's in the country. So I think it's important that you have all those things in place before you try and put together an event. One time someone asked me, they were like, "Oh, I want to set up a tournament. How do you do what you do?" And I said, "I have no idea. I have no idea how come people come to my events. I mean, it just started as a thing that I wanted to do, and at my first event, I think there were 75 people there, and now we just had 245 at Main States. So, for me, it's just one of those things I built up over time, reputation, giving a shit, and really just kind of putting a lot of work and effort into it. If all you guys are going to put the effort into pulling and putting on and having a good tournament, I want to put on the same effort to make sure that the event is run well. So if that makes sense, I guess.
Oh, it totally makes sense. Totally. And that goes back to that reputation thing, right? You build this thing.
Yeah.
You just do the best you can, and slowly it gets better if you're doing a good job. That's all it is.
Right.
So I don't know if
you build it, they will come.
But basically, Nate just said he wants everybody to email him and Facebook him with requests on how to start tournaments and stuff. So if I were you guys, as soon as you get off the podcast, start getting in touch with Nate. Right?
Yeah. Usually I tell people my phone's broken or
email Nate at rickflairrules@gmail.com. All right,
guys.
fellas.
Awesome, man. You guys gave a lot of awesome information. You answered a lot of questions. I really appreciate you guys coming on and dealing with Badger's crappy Wi-Fi too. So thanks.
Yeah, that sucks. Leave it to New Hampshire.
Fight me, all of yous, okay?
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me on, and hopefully we'll see some of you guys in the near future.
Absolutely.
I'm planning on coming to Michigan with my friend Alex right here, so we'll be down there.
Sweet.
Are you really?
Appreciate that.
When is that? What date?
August 27th.
Maybe I'll be there too, because I'm in Minneapolis right now.
Oh, sweet.
I'm not that far away, so maybe I'll meet you guys up there too. Nate, you
Yeah,
coming?
Josh.
I think I'm gonna hang out at home for that one.
Okay.
But I mean, if nothing's set in stone yet, but probably people should plan on me making an announcement about my next tournament sometime in the next 2 weeks or so, and it'll probably be sometime in mid to late September. I got to talk to the Beans and see what they've got going on, and then we'll go from there. I want to put something on between the Boston Championships and then the New England. So mark your calendars. August 6th is the Boston Championships. November 7th, is it, Josh?
5th.
November 5th. And then sometime in between will be the call to arms, moved from June to the fall. So
Awesome.
look for
That
it.
sounds great. Well, Nate, great to talk to you. Steve, good to talk to you as always. And Badger, I will see you soon, and I love you, brother.
I love you too, kid.
All
All
right.
right, fellas. Thank you.
Nate,
See you later. Thank you.